The streetlights warm the asphalt. The night feels calm and safe, until one wrong move tears the veil off a carefully constructed lie. He isn't looking for a fight, but it's already begun. No bullets, no blood. Just silence, documents, overheard conversations, and glances that make people look away. There are no heroes here, only choices: play the victim, or stand up when the ground crumbles beneath you. The game runs deeper than it seems. What you see is just the surface. The real story begins when the masks fall, when truth becomes a weapon, when you realize that the quietest no can shatter an empire built on lies. He doesn't promise to be kind. He promises to be precise. Glad to see you, dear friend. Before the video begins, I have one favor to ask. Head over to the description and subscribe to my buddy's channel. He'll be very thankful. All right, let's begin. The dashboard clock read 9:30 p.m. as Noah Carter's pickup truck rolled silently down the quiet stretch of Magnolia Lane. Golden halos from the streetlights spilled across the asphalt, illuminating rows of near-identical two-story homes lining the peaceful suburban street. Though the sun had long since sunk, the thick summer humidity of Savannah still hung in the air like a damp blanket. "You did good out there tonight, kid," Noah said, glancing sideways at his son. Caleb's little league shirt was streaked with reddish Georgia clay, the proof of a game-saving outfield dive still fresh on the fabric. The boy gave a non-committal shrug. At just 11, Caleb carried a gravity far beyond his years. "Coach says my swing's still off." "You're getting there," Noah reassured him. "That fourth-inning hit was solid." As he spoke, he reached over and ruffled his son's hair. Caleb let it happen for a moment before leaning away, but not fast enough to hide the faint smirk forming at the corner of his mouth. As they pulled into the driveway, the headlights swept across a man approaching at a fast pace. Jared Benson. His hands were raised in urgency, and concern was etched into the deep lines of his face. Noah felt a knot of unease twist inside him. Jared wasn't the panicking type. "Stay in the truck," Noah told Caleb as he parked and killed the engine. His hand instinctively went to his phone as he climbed out. "Noah," Jared whispered harshly as he reached him, his voice tight, his face slick with sweat despite the night air. "I saw someone in your house." Noah's shoulders tensed. "Melanie's car isn't even here." "There's someone else with her," Jared added, throwing a wary glance toward the house. "I came by to return your socket wrench, and I saw them through the window." A chill settled in Noah's bones. His instincts, sharpened by years in the Marines, took over. "Caleb," he called calmly. "Come here, bud." The boy hopped out of the truck, puzzled. "What's going on?" "Nothing big," Noah said evenly. "We're going to hang out at Mr. Benson's for a bit. I need to make a quick call." He rested a reassuring hand on Caleb's shoulder and led him toward Jared. "Think you could keep an eye on him?" he muttered under his breath. "I'm calling it in." Jared nodded briskly and placed a gentle arm around Caleb. "Come on, sport. Chloe just made some fresh cookies." As they walked away, Noah pulled out his phone, never taking his eyes off the house. The interior lights cast a dim glow through partially drawn curtains. Through a narrow opening, something moved. 911, what's your emergency?" "This is Noah Carter, at 237 Magnolia Lane. My neighbor just saw an unknown man inside my home." His voice was steady and composed. "I'm outside with my son. No one's gone in yet." The dispatcher confirmed that officers were en route. Noah paced near the edge of the driveway, his mind racing through every possible scenario, none of them good. Within minutes, 2 cruisers pulled up, lights flashing in silence. From the first vehicle stepped Officer Riley Sanders, youthful but confident. She approached with professional urgency. "Mr. Carter?" "Officer Sanders." She extended her hand, and Noah gave it a firm shake. "My son's out here with me. My wife." He checked his watch. She mentioned going out with friends. Her car's not around. Sanders gave a short nod and scribbled a note. "Please wait here," she instructed, signaling to her partner. Both officers moved toward the house with practiced caution, hands near their holsters. Noah stood rooted, watching them approach the window. Then something in Sanders's posture shifted. She turned and returned to him, her expression darkened with unease. "Mr. Carter," she said quietly, "you're going to want to see this." An icy weight settled in Noah's chest as he followed her. What he saw through the window froze him. Melanie sat comfortably on the couch, laughing, a glass of wine delicately balanced in one hand. Across from her lounged a man Noah didn't recognize, clean-cut, athletic, and self-assured, leaning in toward her with an easy grin. Strewn across the floor were the shredded remains of what Noah instantly recognized as their wedding photos. "I wasn't expecting this," Sanders muttered under her breath. Noah couldn't move. The sight before him carved itself into his memory like a wound. 15 years of marriage, every memory, every moment, scattered in pieces on the floor. His jaw clenched and his eyes turned to steel. "I'm going in." His voice was low, but unshakable. Officer Sanders hesitated. "Sir, under the circumstances—" "It's my home," Noah said firmly, locking eyes with her. "My name's on the deed, and that's my wife, with him." She paused, then gave a small nod. "We'll accompany you, in case things escalate." Noah walked toward the front door with purpose, each step slow and resolute. He didn't bother with keys. He simply grabbed the handle and turned. Unlocked, of course. Why would Melanie have locked the front door if she was certain he wouldn't return for hours? The hinges groaned as it opened. Inside, the sound of laughter came to a sudden, jarring halt. Melanie froze mid-sentence, her wine glass hovering in midair. The man next to her straightened instantly, the surprise on his face quickly curdling into a smug smile that made Noah's hands tighten into fists without thinking. "Noah," Melanie said, her voice unnaturally high, laced with a sugary concern. "What's going on? Why are the police here?" Noah scanned the room with icy detachment. 2 drained wine bottles on the table, faint music murmuring from a speaker in the corner, and fragments of torn wedding photographs strewn across the floor like litter. A mixture of her familiar perfume and an unknown man's cologne clung to the air. "Jared thought he saw someone inside," Noah said in a level, unreadable voice. "He assumed it was a break-in." "An intruder?" Melanie gave a brittle, awkward laugh. "That's ridiculous. This is Connor. He's just a friend from the gym." Connor offered a relaxed wave, lounging on Noah's couch as though it belonged to him. "Hey man, sorry for the confusion." Noah didn't respond. His eyes remained fixed on Melanie. "What happened to the dinner party? I thought you had guests coming?" A flicker of unease passed over her face before she quickly masked it. "Plans changed," she replied, a little too breezily. Noah's gaze drifted to the torn photos at their feet. "And this mess?" Following his eyes, she gave a tight shrug. "We were cleaning up, tossing out old stuff." "Decluttering," Noah repeated, the word dripping with acid. Officer Sanders cleared her throat delicately and stepped forward. "Ma'am, your neighbor reported seeing an unfamiliar man entering your home. We came to ensure there was no break-in." "Well, clearly there's nothing to worry about," Melanie said sharply, then softened her tone as she glanced at Connor. "Just a big misunderstanding." Noah heard movement behind him and turned in time to see Caleb step hesitantly into the room. The boy's expression was uncertain, brows knit in confusion. "Mom?" he asked, walking past Noah. Melanie went pale. "Caleb, honey, why are you home already?" "The game's over," he said plainly. His eyes moved between his mother, Connor, and the torn photographs, the truth settling into his features with a slow, painful realization. "You're upsetting him," Melanie snapped, standing quickly. "Noah, you're being dramatic and frightening our son. This isn't helping." Not in front of him. Noah cut in sharply, his voice slicing through the room like a razor. Connor stood up, folding his arms. Come on, man. You're making a big deal out of nothing. This isn't what it looks like. Noah finally turned to him, his gaze like ice. The arrogance drained from Connor's face. You don't speak, Noah said coldly. Not in my house. Later, Morgan jotted something onto her yellow notepad. Good, she said, her tone crisp. A regular pattern of responsible care strengthens your position. She looked directly at him, her expression sharp and focused. Mr. Clark filed his motion yesterday. As expected, your wife is pursuing full custody. She's pointing to your military background as a sign of possible emotional instability. Noah's jaw clenched. I left the Marines 12 years ago. I've never even been cited for a traffic violation. I checked, Morgan replied, offering a small but genuine smile. They're using a generic argument, not actual evidence. That works in our favor. She turned her monitor toward him. Melanie's name was at the top of the screen. She's been very active online. These are screenshots of private messages to mutual acquaintances. Note how often she uses words like controlling and aggressive, all of which started appearing just 2 weeks ago. Noah read silently, the muscle in his jaw twitching. Names he recognized, people they'd dined with, invited to barbecues, friends they'd considered close, were now being turned against him, fed a carefully curated version of reality in which Melanie was the victim. She's crafting a story, Morgan said. One where she's fleeing a harmful relationship, not someone caught cheating. What's our response? Noah asked, eyes narrowing. We respond with facts, she replied, opening a new document. I've already filed to freeze the joint accounts. There were some questionable withdrawals. That stops the financial bleeding. She continued briskly. Next, we collect character statements, neighbors, clients, teachers from Caleb's school. We present you as who you truly are, a dependable, loving father without any history of violence or instability. Noah nodded slowly, thinking about the local projects he'd led, the playground he'd built, the teams he'd coached for his son, the trust he'd earned in the community. And Caleb? He asked, the question heavier than all the rest. She's telling him I'm trying to take him from her. Morgan's expression darkened, her professional composure crackling with anger. That's parental alienation, Mr. Carter. It's not just manipulative, it's legally actionable. She made another note in her pad. We're filing a request for a guardian ad litem, Morgan said. The court will appoint someone solely to advocate for Caleb, a neutral party who will represent his wishes without influence from either of you. For the first time in weeks, Noah felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Maybe this wasn't just about surviving anymore. Maybe, just maybe, he had a chance to win. There's another issue, Morgan continued, her tone sharpening slightly. Officer Sanders reached out this morning, she said. Your wife submitted a police report. She's accusing you of threatening both her and Mr. Vaughn the night you found them together. Noah went pale. That's not true. I believe you, Morgan said with steady calm. So does Officer Sanders, which is why she called me privately instead of bringing you in for questioning. Though her voice remained composed, her gaze carried a clear warning. Still, it complicates things. She's trying to trap me, Noah muttered, overwhelmed by the sheer malice of Melanie's actions. Yes, and we'll make that work in our favor, Morgan replied, closing her laptop with finality. She met his eyes with cool determination. Mr. Carter, understand this. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Mrs. Carter and Mr. Clark will come harder once they see you're not backing off. They'll provoke you, try to cast you in the role they've created. Noah gave a firm nod, steeling himself. They won't break me. Good, Morgan said, standing up, signaling their meeting had ended. Concentrate on your son. Be the stable, loving parent he knows. Document everything. But live your life like normal. I'll handle the courtroom. As Noah rose, she added, "Take photos of the house. Make sure Mr. Vaughn's things are visible. It'll support our case when we get to property division." At the doorway, Noah paused. "Ms. Tate, do we really have a chance?" Her smile was sharp and confident. "Mr. Clark thrives on fear. He won't know how to react when we beat him playing his own game." She gently aligned a pen on her desk. "I've faced him in court 3 times. I've won all 3. I plan to make this number 4. That afternoon, Noah drove to the Burks to pick up Caleb. The ride to their small apartment was mostly quiet. "Dad?" Caleb asked at last, staring out the window. "Is it true Mom wants me to live with her and Connor?" Noah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "No, Caleb, that's not going to happen." "She said you didn't want me anymore," the boy whispered. "She said that's why you left." Noah immediately pulled over and parked. He turned in his seat. "Look at me, Caleb." The boy met his eyes, and Noah spoke with unwavering sincerity. "I will never stop wanting you in my life. You mean everything to me. I left the house so things wouldn't get worse, for your sake. Not because I wanted to be away from you." Tears welled up in Caleb's eyes. "I heard her talking to Connor," he said softly. "She said they're moving to Florida once they get the house. She said I'd like the beach." Noah fought to stay calm, even as rage boiled beneath the surface. "Listen to me, Caleb. We're not going anywhere. This is your home, your school, your friends. Nothing is being taken from you." Caleb's voice cracked. "She's different now. She yells a lot, mostly at Connor, but sometimes at me, especially when I ask about you." Noah felt his heart ache. "I'm sorry, buddy. You don't deserve that." "I don't want to go back there," Caleb murmured. "You won't. Not tonight," Noah assured him. "You're staying with me, and we'll work everything else out, I swear." That night, after Caleb fell asleep on the pull-out couch in their tiny apartment, Noah sent a message to Morgan. Melanie told Connor they're planning to move to Florida with Caleb. He overheard them. "We need to act fast." Her reply came almost instantly. "Filing emergency custody first thing in the morning. Get him to school like usual. I've got the rest." For the first time since that awful night 3 weeks ago, Noah let himself feel the full weight of his anger, not just over the betrayal, but over the deliberate cruelty Melanie was showing. She wasn't just ending a marriage, she was aiming to destroy him by tearing Caleb away. He had shaped his whole life around their son, long hours, sacrifices, routines, all to give Caleb the kind of secure childhood Noah never had. And Melanie was prepared to unravel it all for a fleeting romance and some fantasy life under the Florida sun. Noah looked at Caleb's sleeping form, peaceful despite the chaos. He made a quiet vow. She may have started this fight, but he was going to finish it. The phone rang just after noon the next day. "This is Principal Hale from Oak Ridge Elementary," the voice said. "There's been an incident involving Caleb." Noah's pulse spiked. He grabbed his keys and rushed toward the door. "Is he hurt?" "No, nothing like that," the principal quickly clarified. "We need you to come in. Mrs. Carter is already here." The line had barely gone dead before Noah was speeding toward the school, heart pounding as fast as the wheels turning beneath him. It was a 15-minute drive, and he choked down a few bites of food on the way, though anxiety had all but killed his appetite. When he arrived, the receptionist gave him a soft, regretful smile and gestured toward the principal's office. The unease in his chest grew heavier. Inside, Caleb sat slouched in a chair, his face blotchy with dried tears. Melanie was beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder, a gesture that could be mistaken for compassion, though Noah didn't miss how Caleb subtly pulled away from her touch. Opposite them sat Principal Hale, her expression composed but unmistakably stern. "What happened?" Noah asked as he approached and took the seat next to his son. Melanie's eyes cut toward him, brimming with scorn. "I'll tell you what happened," she said, her voice brittle with resentment. Your son punched another student. Connor and I have been trying to teach him proper behavior, but let's stick to the facts, Principal Hale interjected, her voice calm but firm. She turned to Noah with a steady gaze. There was an altercation during recess, she explained. According to multiple students, another boy, Tristan, made disparaging comments about your family. Caleb suddenly burst out, his voice strained and trembling. He said my mom's with some muscle guy now, and my dad's going to prison because he's nuts. He said everybody knows it. His face crumpled as fresh tears streamed down. Noah's stomach twisted, then a hot rush surged through him. He crouched beside his son, placing a steady hand on the boy's back. It's not okay to hit someone, Caleb, he said gently, but I understand why you felt hurt. Oh, of course you'd excuse it, Melanie shot back, her tone thick with sarcasm. She turned to Principal Hale. This is exactly the problem. He's encouraging violence. Principal Hale lifted a hand to stop her. For the record, Caleb has never shown behavioral issues before. He's always been polite and well-mannered. That was before his father started filling his head with lies about me, Melanie muttered under her breath. Noah kept his focus on his son. You hanging in there? He asked quietly. Caleb gave a small nod, eyes still wet. Am I in big trouble? Before either parent could respond, Principal Hale stepped in. Caleb, we have a no-tolerance policy when it comes to fighting. You'll need to serve detention tomorrow. We'll also be following up with Tristan's family. His comments were inappropriate and will be addressed. I get it, Caleb murmured. Principal Hale shifted her attention to both parents. We understand your family is going through a tough transition, but it's important that personal matters stay outside the school. She directed a measured look at Melanie, then turned back to Noah. Mr. Carter, since Caleb is staying with you, would you prefer to take him home for the rest of the day? He's understandably shaken. No, absolutely not, Melanie said sharply. Noah calmly pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward Principal Hale. There's an emergency custody motion in progress. My attorney filed this morning. It includes documentation of parental alienation and concerns about flight risk. Color drained from Melanie's face. You can't just do that. I already have, Noah replied steadily. He looked at the principal. Yes, I'll be taking Caleb home today. Please flag his file for any non-authorized pickup attempts. My lawyer will provide formal documentation once the court date is confirmed. Principal Hale gave a single nod, her tone neutral but receptive. We'll update the records accordingly. As they stepped into the hallway, Melanie grabbed Noah's arm, her fingernails digging into his skin. She hissed through clenched teeth. You think this is clever? Connor has people, important people. They're watching everything. Noah calmly pulled her hand off his arm. Put your hands on me again, and I'll file an assault charge. Her eyes went wide. Assault? You're joking. I'm not, Noah said coldly. You filed false reports, manipulated Caleb, misused joint funds, and now your boyfriend's threatening me? For a second, doubt flickered in her gaze before she masked it with a chilling calm. You'll regret this. When I'm done, you'll be lucky to get a weekend visit. Noah didn't flinch. We'll see. He walked over to Caleb, who was waiting by the front doors. Placing a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder, he led him outside toward the truck. The drive home was silent, heavy with unspoken emotion. Caleb sat with his arms folded, eyes fixed on the passing scenery. After a few minutes, Noah broke the silence. Want to talk about it? Caleb gave a small shrug. Then, hesitantly, Are you really going to jail? No, kiddo, Noah replied softly. That's not going to happen. Then why would Tristan say that? Caleb asked, turning to look at him with a troubled expression. And why does Mom tell people you're dangerous? Noah tightened his grip on the steering wheel, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes when people are angry or afraid, they say things that aren't true. Your mom's going through some stuff and she's not handling it very well. Caleb looked down. Is that why she says mean stuff about you to Connor? I heard them talking last night. Noah's jaw clenched, but his voice stayed even. I'm really sorry you had to hear that. What exactly did you hear her say? Noah asked. Caleb paused, clearly uneasy. She was yelling, completely losing it. Said you were ruining everything and that she should have gone to the cops a long time ago. He nervously fiddled with his seatbelt. Who are we talking about? Noah pressed. Melanie, Caleb answered. Connor tried to calm her down, told her to keep it down before the neighbors started listening. That just made her lash out at him too. Noah's thoughts were already racing. Caleb, do you still have your phone on you? The boy nodded and reached into his backpack, retrieving it. Noah had given him that phone once he started going out alone. It was simple, just enough for check-ins and emergencies. If something like that ever happens again, and only if it's safe, could you try recording it? Use the voice memo app. He understood it was a murky line to cross, but Melanie hadn't left him with many choices. They needed hard evidence. Caleb was quiet for a beat, then nodded, more serious than before. Yeah, I can do that. That night, Noah's phone lit up with a message from a number he didn't recognize. This is Connor. We need to talk. Noah stared at the text, suspicion tightening in his chest. Was this some kind of ambush? A ploy Melanie had orchestrated to accuse him of threatening Connor? He weighed the risk carefully, then sent back a reply. Only in public. Forsyth Park, noon tomorrow. Fountain. The response came back almost immediately. I'll be there. Come alone. Noah took a screenshot of the exchange and emailed it to himself, then erased the messages from his phone. Whatever this was, he wasn't walking into it unprepared. The following day, Noah got to Forsyth Park 15 minutes ahead of schedule. He picked a bench with a full view of the paths leading in from every direction. The sun had driven most of the crowd into the shade, and the fountain plaza was nearly empty. Connor arrived on time. His outfit looked more like upscale gym wear than anything meant for actual exercise. He had designer sunglasses on and moved with a kind of self-conscious polish. Thanks for showing up, Connor said, settling onto the bench, but leaving space between them. Noah didn't waste time. What do you want? Connor removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that were red and weary. This has gotten completely out of control. He hesitated. Melanie, she's not who I thought she was. Noah didn't respond, just let the silence do the work. She told me you two were done when I met her, said you were manipulative, that she was too afraid to end things officially. And you bought that, Noah said, tone flat. Wouldn't you have? Connor's voice cracked slightly. But now it's looking like I was just a pawn. Noah gave the slightest nod. And it's only just hitting you that she's hell-bent on tearing me apart. Connor's expression soured. Yeah. She's been pushing me to say I saw things I never did. It's gone too far. He rubbed his palms together. I've made mistakes, sure, but I'm not going to perjure myself. Noah studied him. So why come forward now? I'm trying to protect myself, Connor admitted, leaning in. Last night, she told me she was filing for a restraining order. Said you threatened her at school. I told her I didn't see anything happen. She snapped, threw a glass at me. He tilted his head, revealing a faint cut near his hairline. It's starting to feel like everything she's blaming you for is really her own behavior mirrored back. Noah thought of Caleb's voice on the phone, frightened and small. The pieces were starting to match up, but trust wasn't earned so easily. What is it you expect me to do? He asked. I need a way out, Connor said plainly. But she's got me trapped. She accidentally CC'd me on an email to her lawyer. She's saying we've had an affair for years, wants to name me in the divorce. He raked a hand through his hair. I've got clients, a reputation. If this gets out, I'm finished. And you think I should help you clean up the mess you walked into willingly? Noah's voice was cold and direct. I'm offering you something useful, Connor countered. She's been stockpiling fake timelines, bogus reports. She rehearses everything she plans to say in court. It's all an act. His face darkened. And she's using your son as a weapon. That crosses the line. Noah pictured Caleb in that school office, face tear-streaked, trying to understand the chaos around him. That memory alone steeled his resolve. If you're serious, Noah said slowly, then I'll need evidence. Words won't cut it. Connor nodded and pulled out his phone. I took photos of her notes, caught her while she was in the shower, and I recorded her rant last night about you supposedly threatening her. He hesitated. All I'm asking is you don't let me take the full hit. I never should have gotten involved, but I didn't know what I was walking into. Noah swallowed the sharp words he wanted to hurl, words about betrayal, about inserting himself into someone else's family. But then, clear and steady, Morgan's voice echoed in his head, reminding him to stay focused on what truly mattered. Cut through the distractions and focus on what truly matters, Noah said firmly, pressing a slip of paper into Connor's hand. It had one of Morgan's discreet contact addresses. Send every piece of evidence to this, and then hire legal representation. If what you're telling me is real, there might still be a way to fix this. Connor tucked the note into his coat, relief softening his features. There's something else you should hear. She's planning to sell the house as soon as the divorce is done. Already has a buyer lined up, some friend of hers in real estate. Noah's expression hardened. The house, his house, the one he'd poured months into rebuilding, the home he created for Caleb. I appreciate you telling me, Noah said, voice steady but taut. As Connor stood, he hesitated near the door. I'm sorry it turned out like this. Your son, he's a good kid. He deserves more than being caught between all this mess. Noah didn't reply, only watched as Connor stepped out. Once the door clicked shut behind him, Noah grabbed his phone and dialed. Morgan answered quickly. Connor Vaughn just handed us the final piece, he said, and Melanie has no idea yet. From the speaker on Noah's kitchen counter came Melanie's voice, sharp and furious. Are you completely insane? Across the table, Morgan jotted notes, calm and composed. Lower your voice, she said evenly. Then Connor's voice emerged from the recording, tense and controlled. I will not be quiet in my own home. A loud bang followed. Something heavy knocked over. You got cozy with him? Connor shouted. After everything I told you, Melanie? You've crossed the line. The fake report, dragging Caleb into this. Don't expect me to go along. Noah's tone on the recording was glacial. You're the one pulling the strings, Melanie. You lied about the date of separation. Lied about abuse. Now you want me to lie under oath? A sharp slap rang out through the speaker. Connor swore. Get out, Melanie snapped. I can't wait, he shot back. And when your scheme collapses, don't come running to me. The audio ended with a door slamming shut. Morgan paused the playback, her expression resolute. This plus the documentation Connor handed over? It's enough to dismantle her accusations. She glanced at Noah, her voice steady but laced with concern. Your son took a real chance by recording that. Noah exhaled, pride and worry flickering in his eyes. He never should have had to. No, Morgan agreed, but it proves something vital. Caleb understands the truth, and he's chosen a side. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for the next week. Morgan had cautioned Noah to maintain a composed and diplomatic approach while they gathered evidence. Let her think she's got the upper hand, Morgan had advised. Overconfidence makes people sloppy. Noah took the cue, sending Melanie a measured message. I don't want this to become a battle. Let's work out something that's best for Caleb. Her response came quickly, brimming with smugness. Finally thinking straight? My attorney will send a proposal. You have 3 days to get on board. Noah played along, engaging in preliminary discussions, responding to her increasingly aggressive messages without flinching. Even when she sent photos of Connor back at the house, clearly meant to provoke him, he stayed neutral. Behind the scenes, Morgan's team pressed forward. Officer Sanders submitted a sworn statement directly contradicting Melanie's police report. Neighbors Jared and Chloe Benson gave testimonies detailing the night Noah learned of the affair, including her erratic behavior afterward. Caleb's teachers wrote letters attesting to Noah's dedication as a parent. Then Morgan revealed their most powerful piece of evidence, the house deed. "This is a game changer," Morgan said, sliding the document across the table. "When you refinanced to upgrade the bathroom, the title company messed up. Instead of listing you both as co-owners, they recorded the deed in your name alone." Noah frowned. "That doesn't make sense. We both signed the paperwork." "You did," Morgan confirmed. "But the title office filed it incorrectly, and no one flagged the error, which means, legally speaking, the house belongs solely to you." Her smile was razor sharp. She's been staying in a home she has no legal claim to, and when she filed that police report accusing you of threats, she effectively outed herself as an illegal occupant. "We can work with this." Noah's voice was quiet. "You're saying we build our case on this?" "This is our case," Morgan said, tapping the document for emphasis. "But we hold it back until we're in court. Let her keep thinking this is just another routine divorce. Clear?" The plan was to let Melanie walk into court unprepared for the reality. And the day before the hearing, Connor contacted Morgan's office once again. "He's ready to testify," Morgan told Noah during their final prep meeting. "He'll confirm she coached him on what to say about your behavior, that she admitted the police report was fake, and that her entire goal was to strip you of everything, including Caleb." Noah processed the revelation, his mind clouded with conflicting emotions and uneasy thoughts. What would possess him to take such a gamble? Surely he realized that Melanie's next move would likely be against him. "He's probably just trying to protect himself," Morgan offered. Once he saw the extent of Melanie's deception, he must have known it was only a matter of time before she turned on him too. "Striking first makes more sense then," Noah murmured. "But can we rely on him?" Morgan's jaw tensed ever so slightly. "Not entirely, but we don't need to. We already have plenty of ground to stand on." "His statement just ties it all together," she added. That evening, Noah sat in the living room of their humble apartment, going over schoolwork with Caleb. His attention, however, drifted repeatedly to the legal battle awaiting him. Caleb had become quieter in recent weeks, growing increasingly withdrawn as tensions escalated around him. Eventually, he broke the silence. "What's going to happen tomorrow?" he asked softly, setting his pencil aside. Noah hesitated, searching for a way to explain the situation without overwhelming his son. He needed to keep it truthful, but simple. "Tomorrow, the judge will listen to both your mom's story and mine. Then they'll decide what's best for all of us." Caleb gave a thoughtful nod, a frown forming on his small face. "Will I have to choose between you?" "No, buddy," Noah assured him gently, pulling him in close. "You won't have to choose. The judge just wants to make sure you're okay. That's what matters most." Caleb looked up, his voice quiet but firm. "I want to stay with you." Pride and heartache surged within Noah all at once. "That's what I'm fighting for, Caleb. I promise you." Once Caleb had fallen asleep, Noah sat in the dim room, the silence broken only by the buzz of a new text message. It was from Melanie. "My attorney says you'll be lucky if they even allow supervised visits. Hope all this was worth it." He didn't write back. There would be nothing left to say once tomorrow arrived. The courthouse wasn't nearly as imposing as Noah had imagined. It resembled more a functional office building than the grand courtrooms seen on television. Inside, Judge Elise Whitman presided over the hearing from a modest bench. With silver hair pinned tightly back and glasses resting on her nose, she quietly reviewed the case materials in front of her. Noah sat beside Morgan, both dressed for the gravity of the moment, him in a crisp navy suit, her in stark black. Across the aisle, Melanie wore a carefully chosen cream dress that highlighted her slender frame, her appearance curated to project innocence and fragility. Her lawyer, Raymond Clark, shuffled papers with the poise of a seasoned professional. He leaned in to murmur advice to Melanie from time to time, prompting delicate nods or slight smiles. Notably, Connor Vaughn was absent. When the bailiff instructed everyone to rise, Judge Whitman closed the file and gave the room a knowing glance, one that hinted she'd seen every strategy imaginable play out in her courtroom. "This is an emergency custody and residence hearing in the matter of Carter versus Carter," she began. "I've reviewed the initial documentation. Due to the severity of the claims, I will be hearing arguments directly, rather than relying solely on written statements." She turned her attention to Clark. "You may proceed, counsel." Clark stood with polished confidence, smoothing his designer jacket. "Thank you, Your Honor. As outlined in our filings, my client, Mrs. Carter, is requesting immediate sole custody of her son, Caleb Carter, due to serious concerns regarding Mr. Carter's mental and emotional state. She has reported a disturbing pattern of controlling and threatening behavior, culminating in an incident 2 weeks ago when Mr. Carter allegedly threatened both her and a close friend in their home." Noah kept his expression composed as Clark painted him as an unstable ex-Marine, suggesting Melanie lived in fear. The attorney cited police records and Melanie's own reports, attempting to build a narrative of fear and instability. "Additionally, Your Honor," Clark continued, "Mrs. Carter has been the child's primary caretaker throughout the marriage, overseeing his schooling, health, and day-to-day needs. Mr. Carter has been largely preoccupied with his contracting work. Disrupting Caleb's care by removing him from his mother's home would only worsen an already precarious situation." When he finally took his seat, Judge Whitman turned to Morgan. She rose smoothly, her presence calm and commanding. "Your Honor, we are not here today because Mr. Carter poses a threat," Morgan began clearly. "We are here because Mrs. Carter was involved in an extramarital affair and has since orchestrated a campaign to sever Mr. Carter's bond with his son and to claim ownership of property that is rightfully shared." She walked forward, handing a folder to the judge. These documents include sworn testimony from Officer Riley Sanders, who responded when Mr. Carter discovered the affair, and statements from neighbors who directly contradict Mrs. Carter's account of events. Judge Whitman studied the materials as Morgan continued. "We also have concrete evidence of Mrs. Carter actively attempting to estrange Caleb from his father, telling him that Mr. Carter walked out and wants nothing to do with him. This is in direct opposition to Mr. Carter's ongoing efforts to remain a devoted and present parent." Clark half rose from his seat, his voice cutting in. "Your Honor, these accusations are unfounded." "You'll have your chance to respond, Mr. Clark," Judge Whitman interrupted firmly. Morgan gave a brief nod before pressing on. "We have additional recordings, made by Caleb himself, of Mrs. Carter disparaging his father and instructing him on what to say in court. On top of that, we can provide documentation of Mrs. Carter's plan to relocate to Florida post-divorce, which would uproot Caleb from everything familiar, his home, his school, his community." This time, Clark stood fully, his posture rigid with objection. "Your Honor, under Georgia's one-party consent law, recordings made without Mrs. Carter's approval wouldn't typically be admissible." "However," Ms. Tate said, pacing with measured confidence, "these recordings were captured inside Mr. Caleb Carter's private residence during conversations in which he was an active participant. Therefore, they are entirely lawful." Judge Whitman raised a hand to signal for a pause. "I'll review the recordings in chambers to determine both their relevance and admissibility. What else do you have, Ms. Tate?" She nodded, walking back to her table to retrieve a folder. "I have 2 further items, Your Honor," she said, opening the folder and pulling out a document. "First, the police report Mrs. Carter filed, alleging that Mr. Carter had threatened her, has since been invalidated. The officer who filed it submitted a sworn affidavit stating that Mrs. Carter's claims did not align with his own observations or the accounts of other witnesses from that night. Approaching the bench, she handed the affidavit to the judge before pulling out another sheet. "Second," she continued, "this is the official property deed for the Carter residence. Due to a clerical oversight during refinancing last year, the deed now lists only Mr. Carter as the legal owner. Mrs. Carter has no claim to the property. This means that when she reported Mr. Carter for allegedly threatening her inside the home, she was, intentionally or not, acknowledging she was living in a house to which she holds no legal right." The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs. Noah glanced at Melanie, whose face had turned ghostly pale. Clark rifled frantically through his files, clearly unprepared for the revelations. But Ms. Tate was far from finished. In addition, Mrs. Carter moved her romantic partner, Mr. Connor Vaughn, into the home without Mr. Carter's consent, she said firmly. She has sold numerous personal items belonging to Mr. Carter and has emptied their shared financial accounts, all while planning to leave the state with their son. Judge Whitman peered down at the deed, brow furrowed. "Mr. Clark, were you previously informed of this issue regarding the property title?" Looking rattled, Clark stood. "This is the first time I've seen that deed, Your Honor. We'll need time to verify whether it's legitimate." Ms. Tate cut in. "It's already on file with the county recorder's office. One phone call can confirm its accuracy." At that moment, the double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. Noah turned to see Connor Vaughn enter, looking uncomfortable in a poorly fitting suit. Melanie's eyes flared with rage as she saw him. "We've subpoenaed Mr. Vaughn, Your Honor," Ms. Tate said, "to provide testimony regarding Mrs. Carter's conduct and statements." Judge Whitman nodded and addressed the bailiff. "Please swear in the witness." After Connor took the oath, Ms. Tate began. "Mr. Vaughn, can you describe the nature of your relationship with Mrs. Carter?" He shifted in place, clearly uneasy. "We were involved romantically. It started about 6 months ago at the gym where I'm employed." "What did she tell you about her marriage at the time?" "She told me she and Noah were living separately," Connor said, avoiding eye contact. "She claimed he was controlling and had a temper because of his time in the military." He paused before continuing. "She also said she was scared to officially file for divorce because of how Noah might react." Ms. Tate leaned forward slightly. "And when did you discover that what she'd said wasn't true?" Swallowing hard, Connor replied, "The night Noah showed up with the police. That's when I realized he didn't know anything about me. They were still living together. There was no separation." "After that incident, did Mrs. Carter speak to you about her plans concerning the divorce or custody of her son?" "Objection," Clark said quickly. "Hearsay." "It's relevant to her intentions and mental state, Your Honor," Ms. Tate argued. After a short pause, Judge Whitman nodded. "I'll allow it. The witness may answer." Connor inhaled deeply. "She told me she planned to take everything, the house, their savings, full custody of their son, Caleb. She said Noah wouldn't get to see him again." His eyes flicked to Melanie, who was staring daggers at him. "She even coached me on what to say if anyone asked about Noah, told me to describe him as violent and threatening, but none of it was true." "Did she ever mention making a police report against Mr. Carter?" "Yes," Connor admitted. "She said it would help her case if there were official records of Noah being aggressive. She came up with a story about him threatening both of us." His voice grew quieter. "I told her I wouldn't lie to the police. That's when things started falling apart between us." Over the next 20 minutes, Connor laid bare Melanie's intentions, her manipulations of their son, her scheme to leave Georgia, and her plan to strip Noah of any parental rights. With each revelation, Melanie's expression hardened, her hands clenching tightly on the table. When Ms. Tate concluded her questioning, Clark declined to cross-examine. The damage had already been done, and he knew it. Judge Whitman called for a short recess. As the courtroom emptied, Noah watched Melanie whispering heatedly to Clark, who looked deflated and kept shaking his head. When the session resumed, Judge Whitman removed her glasses and addressed the court. "I have reviewed the submitted evidence, including the recordings made by the minor child. They are admissible, and the content is deeply troubling." Her eyes settled firmly on Melanie. "Mrs. Carter, this court considers parental alienation, false allegations, and attempts to circumvent jurisdiction with the intent of cutting off a parent's access to their child as serious violations." She then turned to Noah. "Mr. Carter, I understand the gravity of what you've experienced. However, the court's foremost obligation remains the best interests of Caleb. To that effect, I am assigning temporary sole physical custody to Mrs. Carter, with visitation rights for Mr. Carter under supervision until a formal hearing can be scheduled." The judge's words struck like a gavel of relief, and Noah felt it hit him in a wave so strong he had to steady himself. Judge Whitman continued without pause. "Additionally, given the evidence of ownership provided, I am ordering Mrs. Carter and any individuals currently residing at 237 Magnolia Lane to vacate the premises within 48 hours. Any shared bank accounts are hereby frozen until divorce proceedings are finalized." Her attention then turned sharply to Melanie. "And Mrs. Carter, I want to make this absolutely clear. Any further attempts to undermine Mr. Carter's relationship with Caleb or to defy court directives will result in a complete suspension of visitation rights and may lead to charges of contempt. Do you understand?" Melanie responded faintly, barely above a whisper. "Yes, Your Honor." With that, the session was concluded. Noah turned to Morgan beside him. "Saying thank you doesn't feel like nearly enough," he said. "It's a strong start," Morgan replied, her tone even. "But don't forget, this was only the first round. Clark won't take this lying down," Noah said. "He'll regroup and try a new approach before the final hearing." "Let him try," Morgan said with a faint smirk. "He's already lost his biggest move. We just need to keep steady until it's over," she added, gathering her documents. Noah caught Connor's eyes across the courtroom. Connor gave a small, affirming nod and quietly exited through a side door, making a point to avoid Melanie, who remained rooted in place beside her lawyer, her carefully composed facade now visibly broken. Outside, Noah pulled out his phone and called Jared. "It's done," he said simply. "I'm picking up Caleb from school, and we're going home." The moving truck was already long gone, taking with it the final pieces of Melanie's belongings. As Noah stood in the driveway watching it vanish down Magnolia Lane, what remained wasn't triumph or sorrow, but a curious void. The fury he'd carried had evaporated, leaving behind a muted sense of finality. Caleb reached up and clasped his father's hand. "Is Mom going to live with Connor now?" he asked. Noah looked down at his son, struggling to find the right words. Connor had vanished shortly after the court ruling, supposedly taking a job across town. Melanie had been left behind, sorting her possessions under the eye of a court officer who ensured she took nothing beyond what she was allowed. "I don't really know, buddy," Noah answered. "That's something she has to figure out." They walked into the house together. It was now legally and emotionally their home. The spaces once filled with Melanie's presence were marked only by dust outlines on the walls and bare floors, ghosts of a life no longer theirs. Noah had already decided that a complete remodel was the best way forward, a clean slate. "Can I help with my room?" Caleb asked, as if picking up on his father's thoughts. Noah smiled and ruffled his hair. "Absolutely. You can even pick the color." "Even black?" Noah laughed, the sound foreign but welcome. "We'll talk about that. How about we start with something cheerful for the kitchen?" "I was thinking yellow." Over the following 2 weeks, they found their rhythm. Noah rearranged his work commitments to be more present. Breakfasts and dinners became their daily rituals. Weekends were spent in renovation, one room at a time, painting, fixing, and rearranging. But Caleb's visits with Melanie, though supervised, left him visibly drained and quieter each time. After a particularly troubling third visit, where Melanie peppered the boy with subtle questions about Noah's private life, Noah contacted Morgan. "She's still trying to get into his head," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "She's not outright slandering me anymore, but she's manipulating him, making him feel like he's responsible for how she feels. Keep a record of every incident," Morgan advised. "The supervisor should be documenting this too. It will matter when custody is finalized." The divorce proceedings moved along faster than anticipated. With ownership of the house confirmed and the emergency custody decision in place, Clark had little left to contest besides financial matters. Even there, Morgan had the upper hand, citing unauthorized account activity to challenge any additional support claims. Then, just 3 days before the final hearing, Noah received an email from Raymond Clark. "Mr. Carter," it began, "my client wishes to resolve all outstanding matters in the divorce. She is prepared to accept your proposed custody agreement, primary custody to you, standard visitation for her, and will make no further claims to the property or other shared assets. In return, you would agree not to pursue legal action regarding the unauthorized withdrawals or the previously filed false report. Please discuss this with Miss Tate and advise if these terms are acceptable." Noah forwarded the email to Morgan, who called him within minutes. "They're waving the white flag," she said bluntly. "Clark knows he's outmatched. He's trying to salvage what little ground Melanie has left." "What's your take?" Noah asked, eyes fixed on the magnolia tree outside the kitchen window, its blossoms vivid against the dense green leaves. "It's a favorable deal," Morgan acknowledged. "More generous than what a judge would likely give her, considering everything that's come to light." Noah took a moment, weighing his choices with care. "We could still advocate for continuing supervised visits," he said at last. His tone calm, though frustration lingered beneath the surface. "She's still trying to influence Caleb, and there's also the issue of the legal expenses she's racked up for me." He paused, waiting for Morgan's reply. Conflicted thoughts tugged at Noah. One side of him, the part that was still raw and angry, wanted to fight for everything, to make sure Melanie walked away with nothing, the way she'd once tried to do to him. But the other side, the part that remembered loving her, just felt exhausted and sorrowful about how their story had ended. After a beat, he reached a decision. "Let's make a counteroffer. We agree to 6 more months of supervised visits, then review the situation again. She'll cover my attorney fees. I won't mention the money withdrawals or the police report." Morgan blinked, taken aback. "That's pretty generous," she commented. "It's not for her," Noah clarified. "It's for Caleb. And for me. I'm finished with all of this." The final hearing felt strangely mundane, especially in contrast to the chaos of the emergency custody case. Judge Whitman read through the settlement terms, confirmed that both Noah and Melanie understood them, and finalized the divorce. 15 years of marriage came to an end with the simple motion of a pen. Outside the courthouse, Noah stepped through the doors for the last time. He spotted Melanie near the entrance, standing alone. She looked smaller somehow, more subdued, dressed plainly rather than in her usual polished style. Their eyes briefly met, and for a second, he wondered if she might say something. But she didn't. Instead, she turned and walked briskly to a waiting cab, leaving without a word. That evening, Noah hosted a small get-together in his newly updated backyard. Jared and Chloe came by, as did Officer Sanders, now a friend after everything that had happened, and a few neighbors who had stood by him. Caleb ran around with Jared's grandkids, his laughter ringing out and easing the heaviness that had hung over the house. "To fresh starts," Jared said, lifting his bottle. The group responded with the clink of glasses. Noah felt something loosen in him. It wasn't quite forgiveness, but it was something close to peace. The burden of betrayal, long a constant weight on his chest, seemed a little lighter now. Later that night, After the guests had gone and Caleb was asleep, Noah sat alone on the back porch, surrounded by the stillness of the neighborhood. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Heard about the settlement. You did it. Congrats." It was from Connor. Noah stared at the screen for a long moment, then deleted the message without responding. Like Melanie, Connor belonged to a chapter of his life that was now closed. The house shifted and settled around him, no longer echoing with the past. Tomorrow, he and Caleb would finish painting the living room, the last untouched space in the house. Then they could move forward, piece by piece, creating something new from the ashes of what had been lost. 6 weeks later, Noah stood in his kitchen, taking in how far things had come. The glossy white cabinets Melanie had once insisted on were gone, replaced by rich oak that matched the new hardwood floors. The cold granite counters had been swapped for butcher block, now marked with scratches and burns, evidence of daily life. The walls glowed with a soft yellow, just as he'd promised Caleb they would. "Looking sharp, Noah," Jared said, leaning against the doorway. He had dropped by to help install the new industrial-style lights above the island. The space was nearly unrecognizable. "That's the goal," Noah replied, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Want some coffee?" They sat at the island, sipping from their mugs. Jared studied Noah's expression. "You're looking better these days," he said. "Less haunted?" Noah replied with a half-smile. "I was going to say like hell, but your version works," Jared chuckled. They drank in companionable silence for a moment. "How's Caleb doing?" Jared asked. "He's okay. He has tough days here and there. The therapist says that's totally normal given everything," Noah said, glancing at the fridge covered in Caleb's artwork and school assignments. "But overall, he's doing great. He's back to baseball, making friends." "And Melanie?" Jared asked, his tone cautious. "She's sticking to the visitation schedule. The supervisor says her behavior's improved," Noah said, a slight tension creeping into his face. "We don't talk directly. Everything goes through the co-parenting app." Jared nodded. "Chloe heard she moved into an apartment downtown. She's working at that boutique on Broughton now." "Good for her," Noah said genuinely. "As long as it doesn't affect Caleb, I hope she figures her stuff out." They moved on to lighter topics: Jared's retirement plans, the Mustang project, and Caleb's upcoming tournament. The conversation was easy, grounded in quiet understanding rather than expectation. A few days later, Noah was helping Caleb with homework at the kitchen table when his phone rang. Morgan Tate's name lit up the screen. "Noah, I have an update," she said after the initial pleasantries. "The court-appointed supervisor just submitted her final report. She's recommending we end the supervised visitation. Judge Whitman is leaning toward agreeing." Noah looked at Caleb, absorbed in his math workbook, then stepped outside onto the porch. "Is that wise?" "It's only been 4 months," he said, concern sharpening his voice. "The report's very favorable," Morgan replied. "The supervisor notes real progress. Melanie's been consistent in her behavior, finished the parenting classes, and has accepted the current custody terms." Noah felt conflicted. Part of him still didn't believe this change in Melanie, worried it was another performance. But another part, the one that wanted a better future for Caleb, hoped it might be real. "What's your opinion?" he asked, his voice laced with doubt. Morgan paused briefly before continuing, her tone composed and formal. "From a procedural perspective, there's a strong case to conclude the supervision. Melanie has complied with every condition the court imposed. There's no basis to dispute that." She hesitated, then added, "On a personal level, I understand your apprehensions. But consider this. If she were to relapse into old patterns without oversight, it would only reinforce our argument if the matter ever comes back before a judge." As Morgan spoke, Noah's eyes drifted to a cardinal that had just landed on the feeder Caleb and Jared had built. Its scarlet plumage contrasted vividly against the deep green of the garden. "All right," he said finally. We won't challenge it. Morgan offered one final update. The court has scheduled a joint session with the family counselor before finalizing their ruling. It's a standard part of the process to ensure everything moves forward smoothly. The meeting was set for the following week. Noah resolved to approach it with a measured attitude, determined to stay courteous for Caleb's benefit, regardless of how he felt toward Melanie. When he arrived at the counselor's office, Melanie was already waiting. At first, Noah barely recognized her. The signature salon-styled hair and flashy wardrobe had been traded for a modest ponytail and a simple dress. There was something about her look that made her appear younger, like the woman he'd met all those years ago. "Hi, Noah," she said in a quiet, even tone. There was no bitterness or false cheer, just a neutral greeting. "Melanie," he replied with a brief nod, sitting across from her. They waited in silence until Dr. Brooke, the counselor, invited them in. The session proceeded without incident. They covered the basics: co-parenting guidelines, effective communication methods, and strategies for handling conflict without escalation. Both Noah and Melanie engaged sincerely, always bringing the conversation back to what was best for Caleb. As the session wrapped up, Dr. Brooke made a final remark. "In my 2 decades doing this work," she said, "I've seen many situations begin with hostility, but yours is showing real progress. Despite lingering tensions, it's clear your son's welfare is your shared priority. That's meaningful." As they left the building and headed to their separate vehicles, Melanie called after him. "Noah, wait." He turned, and she appeared uncertain, searching for the right words. "I just wanted to say thank you for not fighting the end of supervision." Noah studied her, unsure whether to trust her sincerity. "It's the right choice for Caleb," he replied. She lowered her gaze and nodded. "I've started therapy," she said quietly. "Not dating, just working on myself, trying to figure out the reasons behind my actions. It doesn't excuse anything." She paused, taking a breath. "But I am sorry. For everything." Noah stood in stunned silence for a moment. A part of him wanted to reject the apology, to bring up all the damage she'd done. But what would that accomplish? More resentment? More pain? He had spent too long trying to shed those feelings. Finally, he said, "I appreciate you saying that. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning." "I'm moving to Athens next month," Melanie added. "I've accepted a management role at a boutique. It's not far. I'll still be close enough to see Caleb regularly." She hesitated again. "But I think having a bit of space might help all of us heal." Noah nodded slowly. That might be a good thing. An uneasy quiet fell between them, years of complicated history compressed into a single moment of civility. "Caleb talks about the house," Melanie said eventually. "He told me you've changed a lot of it." "Most of it," Noah replied. "It needed a fresh start," she agreed softly. "Yeah, it did." She glanced at her watch. "I should head out." "Thanks again, Noah." As she walked away, Noah was surprised by a strange lightness in his chest. It wasn't absolution, but it might have been the first move toward letting go. That weekend, Noah and Caleb began the last major renovation, the deck that wrapped around the back of the house. Years of Georgia weather had left the wood cracked and warped. Instead of patching it up, Noah decided to tear it down and rebuild from scratch. "First rule of demo work," he told Caleb as they both adjusted their safety glasses, "is to take your time. No wild swings." Caleb nodded earnestly, clearly pleased to be included in what Jared had jokingly dubbed man's work. Together, they removed the railing, then the boards, one careful step at a time, until only the underlying framework remained. By mid-afternoon, they had cleared the old materials and started installing the new supports. Noah showed him how to double-check measurements, ensure things were level, and drive nails cleanly. Caleb followed every instruction attentively, beaming each time Noah praised his effort. Later in the day, Jared and Chloe showed up with sandwiches and chilled drinks. They admired the progress before settling on a picnic blanket in the yard to share a meal. Chloe leaned toward Noah and said casually, "We're thinking of throwing a neighborhood cookout next weekend. Nothing formal, just something easygoing." It was the ideal opportunity to unveil the newly finished deck. Noah gave a skeptical look, one eyebrow raised. "That's only if it's actually done in time," he murmured, though Jared's calm assurance made him hesitate in his doubt. "What's going on between you two?" Noah asked, picking up on something unspoken. Chloe and Jared traded a brief, conspiring look. "Well," Chloe began, pausing just slightly, "we may have mentioned to a few people that the house renovations were nearly complete, and those few people may have told a few more. It kind of snowballed into a bit of a gathering." "A gathering for what exactly?" Noah asked, his confusion evident. Jared gave a nonchalant shrug. "For starting fresh, to mark the end of summer? Who cares, really?" Jared replied with a smirk. "People want an excuse to come together, Noah. Let them." Noah glanced at Caleb, who had been quietly observing. "What do you say, pal? Should we celebrate once the deck's finished?" Caleb's face brightened with enthusiasm. "Can I invite Tristan from class? And Coach Rhodes?" he asked with excitement. "Absolutely," Noah agreed, unable to say no to that eager expression. "But all three of you," he said, pointing to Caleb, Jared, and Chloe, "are on deck duty until it's done." The next Saturday, the new deck gleamed beneath a fresh layer of sealant, strands of light strung up at Chloe's insistence casting a warm glow. The yard buzzed with laughter and the sounds of casual conversation as neighbors, friends, and clients filtered in, celebrating no specific occasion, yet somehow marking something deeply meaningful. Noah stood by the grill, flipping hot dogs and burgers with seasoned ease. The number of guests had grown steadily, more than he could keep track of. Caleb darted around, proudly telling anyone who would listen how he'd helped with the sanding and staining. Officer Sanders, Riley, as she preferred Noah call her, approached with a cold beer in hand. "Quite the crowd," she noted, offering him the bottle. "Seems like I'm not the only one who thought I needed a little boost," Noah replied, taking it gratefully. She laughed. "You're not pathetic, just used to solitude. It's nice, being surrounded by people who give a damn," she added with a small smile. As night settled in, Noah found himself engaging in conversations he once would have dodged, discussing future projects, neighborhood improvements, and even plans for a dad's fishing trip. It felt like the bonds that had frayed during his divorce were beginning to mend, stronger, somehow, than before. Later, with the crowd thinning, Noah stood at the edge of the lawn, watching Caleb play a wild version of tag with the last few kids. Jared walked over, holding 2 glasses of bourbon. "Not bad for an impromptu party," Jared said, handing him one. Noah nodded, letting the bourbon's warmth sink in. "Thanks to you and Chloe. I really needed this." So did Caleb. Jared looked toward the boy, laughing and sprinting across the yard. "He seems lighter, happier." "He is," Noah replied softly. "His therapist says he's adapting in a really healthy way. Kids bounce back fast." Jared looked over at him. "So do dads, apparently." Noah thought about that. Half a year ago, he'd been consumed with anger, obsessed with beating Melanie at every turn. But now, standing on this deck with laughter behind him and stars overhead, he realized something far more important had emerged. He'd begun to rebuild himself. "To bouncing back," Noah said, lifting his glass. Jared clinked his against it. "And to neighbors who know when to back off, and when to get all up in your business," Noah added with a laugh. It felt good, like another step on the road to healing. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time since the night the police had shown up at his door, Noah felt a flicker of genuine hope. As the last guest left and Caleb fell asleep, worn out from the excitement, Noah lingered on the new deck, gazing at the sky above the magnolia tree. Behind him, the house was quiet, peaceful, home again. Autumn settled over Savannah gently, bringing cooler air and soft light through the thinning leaves. The sweet gums and maples began their slow transformation into red and gold. Noah and Caleb slipped into a rhythm of daily life, school drop-offs and pickups, baseball practice twice a week, Friday movie nights, and weekend home improvement projects. Melanie's move to Athens had been uneventful, and she stuck to her visitation schedule, coming down every other weekend. The shift from supervised visits had gone better than Noah expected. Whatever her therapist was doing seemed to be working. Life had settled into something steady, not what it used to be, but real and rewarding in a new way. One crisp evening in October, Noah sat on the deck, grading papers for the woodworking class he'd begun teaching at the community center. Caleb joined him with his math homework, settling into the chair beside him. They worked in a comfortable silence, occasionally interrupted by a question about fractions or a comment about one of Noah's students struggling with mortise and tenon joints. The sky turned vivid shades of orange and purple as the sun sank lower. "Dad?" Caleb asked, setting his pencil down. "Can I ask you something?" Noah looked up, hearing something serious in his son's voice. "Of course, buddy. Anything." Caleb seemed to choose his words with care, as though each one mattered. "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" he asked in a low voice. "Wish what had gone differently?" Noah responded, a trace of uncertainty in his tone. "You know, everything with Mom. The divorce, the legal stuff." Caleb clarified, fidgeting with his pencil, spinning it between his fingers. Noah paused and placed his red pen down, turning his full attention to his son. It had been a long time since Caleb had brought up the divorce so directly. Noah understood the weight behind the question. "That's a heavy one," he replied, taking a moment. "I regret that you had to be part of it, that it hurt you." Caleb kept his eyes steady on his father. "But do you regret not backing down? Going against Mom?" Noah let the question sit in the air as he glanced at the fading light outside. "No," he answered firmly. "I don't regret that. Sometimes in life, you have to take a stand. There are moments when certain things just can't be overlooked. It was never about possessions or money. It was about doing what was right, for you, for what was true." Caleb gave a quiet nod, seeming to find reassurance in his father's response. A brief silence passed before he spoke again. "She told me she's sorry, you know." Noah looked up, surprised. "Your mom said that?" "Yeah," Caleb confirmed. "Last weekend. She said she made a lot of mistakes because she wasn't happy, that she never should have tried to hurt you, or made up things about you," he added, his voice softening. "She cried a bit, too." Noah took that in, reminded of the apology Melanie had given him months ago, a rare moment of honesty that had felt real rather than manipulative. "That must have been hard for her," he said gently. "It was strange, but kind of good too," Caleb admitted. "She didn't blame you this time, and she didn't make me feel like I had to pick sides." Noah felt something ease in his chest, a pressure that had been there too long. "I'm really glad to hear that," he said sincerely. Though his feelings toward Melanie were tangled, he knew how important her healing was for their son's well-being. They sat quietly, watching the sky darken as stars blinked into view. Noah's thoughts drifted to the chaos they had survived. Caleb's breakdowns at school, the nights he spent in a borrowed room at Jared's place, the courtroom wars that drained them both. "Dad," Caleb said, breaking the silence, "Tristan's parents split up last year. His dad's still really angry. He says a lot of mean stuff about Tristan's mom, and it makes Tristan feel awful." Noah turned toward his son, hearing the question that hadn't been asked yet. "You're wondering why I'm not like that, why I'm not still mad at your mom?" Caleb nodded. "You once told Mr. Benson you'd never forgive her," he reminded him softly. Noah let out a slow breath. He remembered the fury he'd carried in those early days. I did say that, he acknowledged. And I meant it then. But there's a difference between not forgiving and letting bitterness run your life. I haven't forgotten what happened, and maybe I never will, but I won't let it shape the rest of my life, or yours. Is that why you never say bad things about her? Caleb asked. That's part of it, Noah said. But it's also because no matter what went wrong between us, she's still your mother. You love her, and that's exactly how it should be. Caleb seemed to mull that over. But didn't it make you angry? Or sad? He asked quietly. It did, Noah admitted, his voice tinged with old pain. Both. I was angry and heartbroken for a long time, but holding on to that would have just kept hurting us. It wouldn't have fixed anything. He reached over, tousling Caleb's hair affectionately. Sometimes real strength means knowing when to let go of the fight and start building something better. They fell into a peaceful silence again, the night air cooling around them. Across the yard, tiny lights began to blink, fireflies flickering gently in the shadows like stars scattered on the lawn. Can I ask you one more thing? Caleb said, breaking the calm. Of course, Noah replied. Do you regret marrying Mom? He asked, the question fragile, uncertain. Noah felt his chest tighten, but he didn't hesitate. No, I don't, he said with quiet conviction. Because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have you. He looked directly at his son. And you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Caleb smiled, a hint of relief softening his features. After a beat, he began gathering his schoolwork. I'm gonna go finish this inside. It's getting chilly. I'll be right in, Noah assured him, watching as Caleb walked toward the house. At the door, Caleb paused and turned back. Dad, you think people confuse kindness with weakness? Noah raised his eyebrows, surprised by the question's depth. Yeah, he said, nodding. More often than you'd expect. Caleb nodded solemnly. Well, that's not on us. That's on them. With that, he slipped inside, leaving Noah alone in the darkening yard. He stared after his son for a long moment, then turned his gaze back to the lawn, where fireflies still floated through the air. The soft patio lights cast a warm glow, and Noah reflected on Caleb's parting words. So simple, so wise. Kindness mistaken for weakness. That's not on us. When had his son grown so insightful? Perhaps he had always been quietly watching, taking in the world with those thoughtful eyes, making sense of things in his own silent way. Noah leaned back in his chair, his gaze lifting to the vast night sky, where countless stars shimmered above. The anger that had once propelled him through the bitterness of divorce had long since ebbed away, replaced not by emptiness, but by a piercing sense of understanding. He now saw that real strength wasn't found in clinging to grudges or chasing payback. What truly took courage, he now believed, was standing tall for what was meaningful and daring to move forward, regardless of what came before. From inside the house, he heard Caleb rustling through the kitchen, no doubt in search of something to eat. The porch light blinked on, washing the deck in a soft glow, the same deck Noah had built with his own 2 hands, Caleb right there with him, hammering nails and laughing through the work. Around him were the fingerprints of a shared life, not flawless, but honest and rich with purpose. Noah finally saw that winning hadn't meant defeating Melanie in the courtroom. Instead, the real triumph had been in proving to himself and to Caleb that dignity and decency could survive even the most painful endings. The close of one part of life didn't mean the story itself was over. With a quiet sense of peace, Noah gathered his papers and stepped inside, drawn by the warmth and light of the home they had slowly, stubbornly rebuilt together. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.